This island is the bloomiest place. I just love it already, and I'm so glad I'm going to live here. I've always heard that Prince Edward Island was the prettiest place in the world. Hi friends, I'm Ashley and welcome to Darling Cottage Diary. If you're new around here, I make all kinds of journaling content, and oftentimes I will upload the same video twice, one with the ASMR quiet, relax after work, I've had way too many people talking to me today kind of videos to help you unwind, and I also like to upload a video about whatever the movie or book is, so that we can discuss in the comments our favorite memories or themes and other little tidbits talking about the stories. So I released an ASMR video for Anne of Green Gables earlier this week, and have been preparing for the first tropical storm of the season, getting my house ready, getting my generator set up, all of that. And so it took me a hot minute to get around to doing the voiceover for Anne of Green Gables, but I've had multiple people in the initial video ask for it. So I'm very excited to be able to talk about that today. So Anne is not just famous for her series of books. There are 8 total in the series, written by Montgomery. The first one was published in 1908, and she kept writing until her death in 42, and so she has a mastery of language when it comes to talking about imagery, when it comes to the inner world of somebody who's very creative. And although she said that, like in her journals that were also later published in the 1980s, even though she said that Anne stories are not autobiographical, there are lots of parallels between she as the author and her Anne girl, who she has always had multiple times said that was her favorite creation, that she made this real human girl, and she was her favorite character she ever wrote. And they both grew up in different but like similar parts of Canada, Prince Edward Island, Cavendish, and a couple of other places. And she lived with her grandparents. Her mother died when she was very young, when she was a toddler. Her father left her with her grandparents so that he could go earn money and build business and perhaps remarry. And so they kept correspondence, by letters and stuff, but he was not around very much. And so she was kind of brought up by these strict grandparents, very similar to Matthew and Marilla, and for Anne. And later, when she was a teenager, she went to live with her father because she missed him so much. And although they got along really well, apparently her stepmom was not a very nice person in general, and especially to Anne. And sounds like she may have been a little bit of a inspiration for Mrs. Hammond at the beginning of Anne of Green Gables. I don't know if that's true or not, but just her brief descriptions of her stepmother and the relief she felt when she moved back in with her grandparents sounds very similar. Anyway, so a little background of Ellen Montgomery, the author, and the story itself. If you haven't read the book or seen the 1985 film or seen the Anne with an E show on Netflix, you're missing out so much. It's so sweet, and they're all very different, all central around a similar character. The 2 actresses bring Anne to life in very different ways, and as well as Gilbert, and as well as Diana and Ruby and all of the other characters. So I grew up with the 1985 film. I read Anne of Green Gables for the first time myself. My mom read a lot of the books to me when I was growing up, like when I was really young, but the film, or the book itself that I read, I think I was in 5th grade, 4th or 5th grade, so that would be 10 or 11, and I just loved it so much. And some of the verbiage was, I remember it being a little bit over my head because of the imagery and just how she describes things. It was hard for me to relate to some of it, especially as she starts getting older, because I just wasn't going through things like puberty. I wasn't going through certain things, so I had no scope for relating. But Anne of Green Gables in particular, for the older books particularly, but Anne of Green Gables was definitely my favorite, 'cause she's 11 in that book, and so it was perfect age for me to read. And ashamedly, I haven't reread them as an adult, and doing this page and revisiting, all these memories, it has inspired me to reread them. Somehow my copies I can't find, and so I'm gonna have to go on a hunt for them probably this weekend because it's time for a book haul. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about some of the parts of the book and things that, I don't know, I find adorable, and also things that I very much relate to. So this is what today is, very cozy chat of things that parts of Anne that you related to, or maybe parts of any of the other characters that you love. Now, I have to say that as much as I'd like to say I'm just Anne 100%, I'm totally not. I was probably about half and half, similar to Diana and Anne. Probably why they, were such good friends, is they complemented and attracted to each other like little magnets. Diana was this kind of quieter, more observant friend. She was very reserved. She, was very concerned about language learning and propriety and manners and fashion, and not that Anne wasn't at all. Diana was afforded having access to learning all of that as a young girl growing up, and that was something Anne had to learn once she was in a stable environment, right? And even I find it interesting that even though this was written during the time period of the early 1900s, that we modern girls, and maybe this is why it has it's such a pervasive story. It was like we modern girls can see ourselves through Anne, and probably not just modern. It's Anne kind of provides this freedom to look beyond certain gender norms. She really likes running rough and tumble, running in the woods. She loves nature. She loves climbing trees and playing with the chickens and everything. And I think that was something that was explored really well in the Anne with an E show compared to the 1985 show, which was explored a little bit, and of course the books, but that was further opened up, I think, with the more modern version of it. And there's even a day that is not in the books, but there's a day in the Anne with an E show where she dresses up like a boy, and she's excited because she gets to play marbles, and people ask her to help lift things, and she, pays her a little money for it, and so she gets to explore what it's like to be a boy in a time period where the men and women are very different today. Not saying we're not, absolutely not. We are, and I honestly think we could probably do with bringing some gender norms back. Just finding an equilibrium, for sure. But I liked that it explored that, and when it came down, she was having fun all day, but when it came down to it, she just wanted to wear the pretty dress in the window. She was like, okay, that was fun. That was a fun little vacation. That was a little jaunt. But I love being a woman. And she even says that in that show. Like, oh, I love being a woman for a couple of different things. And watching her grow up in the books and in the shows is part of that. And I think all girls do go through that, no matter the age, no matter the time period of, it's normal for children to be able, before puberty, it's normal for children to be able to play, and it's not, even though they're different, it's, you can still, as kids, you can still wrestle and get dirty and run, and you're a kid, you're in a different category. And then once you start differentiating as you get older, learning those boundaries and learning that all of us go through those boundaries at a different time and learn those boundaries at a different time is kind of tough. I remember getting to the age where it my other friends, especially like during the summer, I would usually go play with, and we were all kind of interested in the same things, playing with dolls, swimming, and doing all of these things. And then one summer, it was so sad. It was, I can't remember if it was between 6th and 7th grade, or I think it was 7th and 8th grade. All of a sudden, my friends wanted to paint nails and do their hair and do things that are typical of teenage girls, and I was not there yet. I was a late bloomer in that way. I wasn't really interested in that until I was about 15, 16, and they hit that, at 12, 13, and I don't know if that is significant in any way, but I had a hard time because I felt like I was being left behind in one way, and I also felt like they were lying in some way, which made me mad because I've been very, like, in justice and truth has always been very important to me. And so it was just like, you're the same person. What happened? Why aren't, but then, I don't know, a year or two after that, I started going through it myself of not caring so much about what I looked like, but it was more like my dolls weren't fun to play with anymore. And just little kids stuff wasn't fun to me anymore. It was like the spark was gone, and it was a really sad realization that all of a sudden other things were more enticing and important, and the things that I used to do to play and enjoy myself didn't bring me the kind of joy that they used to. And I don't know if everybody has such a stark realization of that, but I certainly did. And I think we watch Anne go through that quite a bit as well, because not only is she catching up socially because she was in unstable home environments, she was parentified and having to take care of other people's kids, but she was also still a child and had childhood needs, and then she kind of had to work through all of that on top of trying to learn how to be, kind of a proper young lady. And fortunately, she was in a very natural environment. I feel like she would have had a harder time if she had been raised in a more like city-fied environment. She had some place to blow off steam and run through the haunted woods and whatnot. But, some other things I can certainly relate to Anne on would be, oh goodness, smashing that slate over Gilbert Blythe's head. I laughed so hard when I read that because I hated getting in trouble when I was growing up. I would say still, I don't like people being upset with me. I'm very sensitive to that. And so, she got in trouble constantly, and usually on accident, her just kind of learning the social rules around her. But she still was much more outgoing and louder than I was. And especially at school, I was terrified to get in trouble at school because I didn't want to get in more trouble at home. And so, not that that ever happened either, I just didn't like being in trouble ever. And so I wanted to blend in with, I don't know, I didn't like being called out for doing something, quote, wrong. But the few times I did get in trouble at school, it was because boys were, like poking me or pulled my chair out from under me, and I pulled one kid's ear almost clear off. I just pulled his ear to the ground because he kept poking me in my ribs. And then the kid who pulled the chair out from under me, I didn't even think it was a reaction. I stood up and punched him in the face because I fell down and got up and just... And that's not, particularly something I'm proud of. I think it's funny now looking back. I don't have daughters, but if I did and that happened, I would have a hard time not laughing about it because, like, good for you defending yourself, but also, like, the shock of it, probably from everybody around, was much more than I had the radar for at that time because I was so surprised myself I did those things. But I was very protective of, like, my friends. I was very protective of animals and still am. And, very defensible of myself in situations where I felt threatened. So that, in that way, I can definitely relate to Anne. And on that same vein, her dyeing her hair green and it being like the end of the world, it struck me rewatching the 1985 one. Because when she does that, it's... People dye their hair green because they pay hundreds and thousands of dollars to dye their hair green now, and it's like a cool thing. So that was just something that I found funny, kind of rewatching that. But anyway, those parts of Anne I love, and her dedication to academia, the fact that she became a teacher, all of these things I definitely, the fact that just books were her escape and her comfort, and I literally have stacks of books all over my house, by every chair, by my bed, a full bookshelf. I have more books probably than anything else in my house as far as physical possessions go. I have more books than clothes. I do know that. So that part of her I could also definitely relate to. It was just temperament and kind of this desire to feel distinguished, feel mannered, feel like a lady. I felt more like Diana was a little more relatable in that way. Their tea fiasco is one of my favorite parts of the books. And staying in Charlottetown with Diana's aunt, another favorite part, just because, you know, those were the aesthetic parts of the book, right? Those are, and there were funny things that happened, but it was just very, it was the pretty parts of the book. And, you know, side note, I'm sorry, I know this is very rambly, but I've had coffee and been cooped up in my house with a storm, so here we go, we're rambling. There was this one part of the late 80s, early 90s, actually all of the 90s, where there was a lot of just Victorian influence, and I felt like it was a unique experience, but I'm finding online that it was not, that everybody was kind of obsessed with all the girls, the girly girls were obsessed with the Victorian and early, like, Edwardian periods, and I'm not sure why, other than there were a lot of movies and turn of the century books that were republished at that time. Samantha Parkington also, I think, had something to do with that, with if you were into American Girl books and dolls. There was kind of a lot, if you look in thrift stores, a lot of 80s and 90s books, craft books and cooking books that were like a la Victorian were published. So I don't know why it was such a trending thing when I was that age, but I'm very glad it was, because it's fun to grow up, you know, reenacting a lot of it and cooking from those recipes. And Anne of Green Gables was part of that, and I still live in that era. I will forever. I think Victorian core walked so cottagecore could run and coquette could run. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe if you would like to see these in the future. I keep the Chatty and ASMR videos separate in 2 different playlists if you'd like to hear those. Otherwise, I will see you on Saturday for a new video. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great week. Bye.